Hello, this is the last from our 3-lesson series on implementation of the user registration use case. In this video, I will show you how to implement the last important part, the sign-in functionality. I'm Lars from Digiterry. Let's begin. When we installed our UE2 framework, we remember that we had already login functionality there. So under site login, we could log in using our username and password. But as you remember, in user model, 2 users were hard-coded. We had 2 users, admin and demo, so we can still take a look because we renamed it to user_p. As you can see, we use these 2 users, but now we will try to perform login using users from database. Let's see what happens if we submit our form. In login page, we click on login, and then inside controller, the following happens. So we are now in action login, and if you are not guest or if you are logged in, then you will be redirected to the home page. Then we create the login form. Then if we take a look, if the user submitted form and if we can log in, then you will be redirected to the previous page. Otherwise, you will see the login page again. So it's login.php. So we can see the page here. So we have here username, password, remember me, and then submit button. So in our case, username is not unique. So it's completely up to you if you want to leave in login form username and password. So I suggest maybe to do it via email and password because email address is unique in our table. If you still want to use username, then don't forget to add this username as unique field after the email. So you can say here username must be unique. Yeah, but in our case we will use an email address. So we go to login form and we say that we want to have here email address and password. So it means here email and password are both required. Email and also we say that email address must be a valid email address. So we also check if it's valid email address. Remember me must be boolean and password must be correct. So this function, so this is validate password. If we take a look, we have here the function validate password and we check whether username and password, in our case it's email address and password, exist in our table. So now we go to our login.php, it's our view, and rename here. Now we don't have username, we should put here email address, and we see here already email and password. So now let's take a look what happens if we press button submit. So inside controller, we try to log in the model. Model is our login form. So we go to login function inside login form model. So it's this one, and it says if validate, then we try to log in. So validate means we check all the rules we have here. So these rules will be checked by framework. We don't have to care about them. So now we will take a look at validate password. So it's validating whether the password and whether the combination of email address and password are existing in our table. So now we have here this get user first. Yeah? So it is getting the user, finding by username for now. But we don't have username, we have email address, so we can already here change find by email, and we are sending the email address which comes from user. So this means that the user model has to have find by email function. So it must be public and it must be static. So I copy the name, I go to user, and at the end we can create new public static function find by email. So, and this function must return me the user with this email address. So we give the email, and here we say return. since we are in user model, usually we say user find one, and here's the condition. We say email address must be email that we get. So since we are in user model, we can use here self. So this function does nothing but returning the user with the specific email address. If it does not exist, then you will get the empty result, which is also checked here. So we go to our login form and we can see here, so we say get user, so we are defining user in our local variable and we return it. So we were here, validate password. And this if user is empty, so we can check it a bit another way. So we say if empty this user that we get by email, or if the password is incorrect, then we get incorrect username or password. So incorrect email address or password. So in this case, we should have here also validate password function. So it's a public function we can see, and we are sending here the password as a plain text, yeah. So that's why it's not just equal. So we can take a look. We create the function in our user model. We say public function validate password, and we give here what users send us without hashing, without encrypting it. So it's just a plain text. And in this case, we use the application security, and here we have validate password, and we can already have here. So this security in our E2 framework can also validate passwords. As you remember, we hash password also using the security. So here we give the plain, and here we give the hash, what we hashed before. So in our case, it's this password. So the password from this model, and it will validate for us. So now we have here, if the user does not exist, or if password is incorrect of existing user, then we have this error message. So for now, we don't have any user, as you can see. Now, if I try to log in with, for example, mail.com and login, I can see incorrect email or password, because here we had actually this case. We didn't find actually the user with this email address because we don't have any users. So we first register. So we sign up. So we say here, for example, one@mail.com. So I will not now use our activation and so on. So we just create a new user. Email, of course, will be sent to this one, but it doesn't exist. So for me, it's not a big problem. And password 1. Sign up. Now it's sending email address to non-existing one@mail.com. I can see successfully registered. We can check our database. So we can see here our user. Now we can try to log in. So now we log in and say here mail.com password 1. So now we have here the problem that we are trying to log in the model user. But this user model must be an instance of this identity interface. So we must use this interface. Since the login functionality, we can see here, login, this get user, so it's actually our user, must have some functions that we use to create cookies, to store session, and so on. As you remember, we had before here user_b, and if you scroll up, you can see it is implementing the identity interface, which has, I go inside, which has here find identity, which is used to find this identity and to create a session. So all these functions are used to store session correctly and uniquely, yeah, among other users. So as you can see, find identity by access token, find get ID, get authentication key, and validate authentication key. So we will now implement this interface also. So we go to our model, and we can see it's extending active record to be able to work with our database and save records. But we also say it implements identity interface. So now you can see that since we are implementing the identity interface, we will have now another problem, that we are not defining the functions which are declared in this interface. As you can see, there are 5 methods which must be declared and defined in our user model. So we'll do it now. So I will scroll down, and we will now implement or create the functions from our old user model. So we start, for example, from getID. So it's the easiest one. I just copy, and we can take a look. So it is just getting the ID of this user. Yeah, it's nothing special. We don't have to do anything else. So the next one. So this is authentication key. So as you can see here, we have to have out key. So we don't have it yet. So why do we need this? We now create one column in our database, and we will store out key there. Each user will have his own out key. It will be also unique among users, and it will be used to distinguish between other users while they are logged in. For example, so here out key some string, and if we log in this user, this string will be stored in a user computer as a cookie on our client side. And when he make a request, we check our out key and his out key, and if they are correct, so we use this function, then this user is still logged in. We will take a look closer. So we create first one field. So now we have to use our migrations. We will create now a new column. We don't go now to database and create manually, because we use database migrations. So I go to my Git bash. I navigate to my project Acme. So it's xampp htdocs acme. So I have here ye migrate. I can see nothing to migrate because I didn't create any migrations yet. So now I create a new migration to add the column. So let's call it ye migrate. Then we say create. So what names did we use first? We can take a look here in our migrations. So we say what we do, what are we going to create. So create table and then table name. In our case, we say create column, and so which column? We will call it out underscore key, in which table it's a user. So it asks to create, we say yes. So the new migration was created. So we go to this migration, and in app, so we say this at column, so table it's a user, column name out key, and type. The type is, we are going to create string. So varchar 60. It is not null. It is unique, and we add it after which column. So if you open our user, we can see ID, UID. Let's add it after contact phone. So after, should copy it, after contact phone. If we don't specify this after, then it will be added at the end. And in down, we remove this column, this, drop, column, so table is user and column is out key. So now we migrate, so we run our migration, migrate. It sees the new migration. I say yes. So one migration was applied. So now we can take a look at our database. So I can see here there's a out key came after contact form. So I can also see the out key. It's varchar 60. It's not null. It's unique, and so on. So now we should just a bit change our register, yeah? Because out key must be also set and it must be required while registration. So we go to our user and we add this column after, so we can see here it's contact form. We say property, it's a string, it's out key. So then we have here out key is required also, and out key is also string, which is can be maximum 60, and out key is also unique. So, and also we can add attribute label. So we can see here, so labels, while printing some forms, labels we will see here. For this field we need the label also translated, and we call it, for example, out.key. So now we add this column, but it's not enough, because while registration we will get a arrow that's required. As you remember, like we did for our UID, so we have here before validate and we set UID. In this case we can also, if it's new record, we can set also out key, so which will be also unique. And we create now here new function, private function set out key, and we say this out key. So now out key, when we say here ye application security, and we use, actually it doesn't matter, in our EID we use generate password hash. Yeah, it's 60, but we actually can use also generate or run random string, and we say length must be 60. So generate a random string. So it doesn't matter. We can also use the same in our. So maybe it's even better to use the generate random string. Yeah? So because passwords actually supposed to use passwords, but we are not. We don't have anything with password here to do. So now we set here new parameters, and now it should work. So now we can create new user. So we go and create a new user. We say here sign up. Okay, as you can see, it does not allow us to go on because we are still using we are implementing this interface, and that's why we have to declare these functions. Let's finish this. Go to our user underscore b, and we have here find identity. So here it's enough if we just return self find one, and we say here ID. So it means it's just looking for the user with this ID in our table. And the next one we have here find identity by access token, public functions, so it's static also. Actually we have to have also access token, but so we don't need access tokens for now. We can just make return null. Access tokens are used to authenticate users using some API requests or some maybe SSOs. So, but in our case, we are just using login page or maybe some Facebook, Twitter. So now we can try to register. So as you can see here, I can create new one. username 2, email address 2@mail.com, 2, sign up. So now it's trying to send to this email address one invitation link. So we can take a look at our database. So now we have the second user. So we have also here authentication key, which we're gonna use for login. So now everything looks fine. Now we can try to log in. So email address was 2, mail.com, and password was 2. So as you can see, undefined property app models user authentication key. So yes, we named it with underscore. So that's why it's a bit different. As you can see here, we have here authentication key like with underscore. So we change it also here. Save, try again. Okay, we are in. As you can see, now it stays here logout 2. It's a username, so I can log out. I can log in again. So I can now type the wrong password, for example, email address mail.mail.com, and for example something, try to log in. So it says incorrect email or password. In this case, if we go to login form, so the user is not empty because we found this user, but this one was false. That's why we see this message. So we typed the wrong password. That's why it goes to validate password. In validate password, we see here it tries to validate password, the password we give here. It's what I typed now. It was wrong password. And this password. This is actually what we have here. So it's hashed password. So it tries to verify our wrong password with this password. Now if I type the correct one, 2, so this function will have here 2, and this one will be hashed. And this validate password compares the 2 with hashed 2, and this must return true. So I try to log in, so it's fine. Now we will fix some small issues. As you remember, our user can have 3 statuses: inserted, active, and blocked. We fix it now that only active users can log in. Last lesson we tested our activation, so we can activate our account by clicking on the link. Now we will just change the status in our database directly. We will say it's 1 now. 1, it's active. So inside controller now we have action login. If we have submitted form, if you can log in, then you go to the previous page. So we go to our model, login, and here we just say if user doesn't exist, or password is incorrect, or user status is not active, status active, then we will say incorrect email or password. Of course, you can create here another message, so you can separately put this one and say, for example, please activate your account first or something, but for now we just put everything together. It's not a big problem to make it separately, so we can test it now. I try to log in. So let's see first, in database I have 2 users, and the first one has status 0. Let's try to log in. mail.com 1. So it says incorrect email or password because this user has status 0. Now we'll go to the second one, 2. So we can log in because this user is active. That's all. Let's now make an overview what we have done in this video. To perform the login, the user first goes to our site login URL in our Acme project. It means he will land in our site controller action login method. After this, he will see the login.php view in our site folder, and he will be able to type his email and password. Through the post request, his credentials will be sent to Action Login in our site controller. Action Login will connect to our login form model to validate the data. The login form model will connect to our user model to find the user using this email. In our find by email method, we access to our database to retrieve the data about this user having this email address, and we will return this object to our login form. In login form model, we prove if the user was not empty, if we could validate the password, and if the user is activated. If all of these conditions were true, we perform the login. If we could log him in, we return true to our action login method in our site controller. It means the login was successful. We found the user with his email address, we could validate his password, and we also checked if the user already activated his account. After this, the user will be redirected to the previous page where he is no more guest. That's all. It was the last from our 3-lesson series on user registration. Now you know everything to implement a login for your own YouTube project. In the next videos, we will cover other project use cases. Thanks for watching. I wish you much fun with coding and good luck.